Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. This is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. Remember, you can also be part of this conversation on our Twitter. Our handle is @SAMediaMonitor. You can also post using hashtag SABC Media Monitor. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Peter Ndoro, and this is what's coming up on the show today. How far should a journalist go to dig up information? Did the Daily Maverick journalist Marianne Tham go too far and go beyond media ethics with her EFF trash story? Well, our panel this week will unpack this for us. Is the SABC's financial woes far from over? The SABC executives appeared before Parliament earlier this week. And, well, those are just some of the stories that we'll be tackling on the programme today. But first, let's take a look at the front pages of your Sunday newspapers this morning, which we'll be discussing later in the programme. The Sunday Times this week is leading with a story cleverly headlined with the song lyrics "Love Me Tender," and it speaks about how the military police are crying foul after a senior officer's wife scored a 210 million rand in contracts. The City Press is leading with the same story. Major General Noel Ndlovu and his wife being investigated for tender rigging. The first contract issued to his wife's company by the military in 2016 for 79 million rand was awarded directly with no tender process being undertaken. The Sunday Independence front page story focuses on embattled Minister Pravin Gordhan, who is described as being on the ropes after the Public Protector's adverse findings against him this past week. The EFF is threatening to go to court if President Ramaphosa does not implement the Public Protector's remedial steps. The Sunday Tribune, well, that paper's reporting eThekwini shamed Mayor Zandile Gumede is expected back at work on Tuesday after a forced 30-day leave of absence. ANC provincial leadership must now decide what to do next after Gumede appeared in the Commercial Crimes Court on fraud charges relating to a 208 million rand tender. The Weekend Argus also has Pravin Gordhan on its front page saying that the EFF is gunning for the minister. Deputy President Floyd Shivambu is threatening President Ramaphosa with legal action if action isn't taken against Gordhan as ordered by the Public Protector in her report this week. Right, so those are our papers. Weekend Argus. Looking at this, yeah, there you go. Those are our newspapers. We'll take a deeper dive into some of those papers a bit later on. But as I said, there's so much to get through on the show, and helping us make sense of these stories are my guest editors today. Makhudu Sifara, who's newly appointed editor of the Sunday World. Welcome to you. As well as journalist and media communications specialist and lecturer at TUT, Tshamano Makhadi. Always a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you, Peter.
All right, well, let's get straight into it now. This past week, seasoned journalist and author Marianne Tham caused a bit of a storm when she wrote an article titled "Hypocrisy Squared, Revolutionary Trash Sometimes Requires Trash Journalism," literally. Now, in terms of Daily Maverick story, she says that she wanted to hold all wealth to account, but just how far do you go to get a story? In this case, Tam went through loads of trash from a Cape Town guest house to get evidence against the leadership of the economic freedom fighters. Perhaps, predictably, this controversial tactic was a huge talking point on social media. Tam facing a lot of criticism for what many called trash journalism. Well, let's take a look at some of what social media reaction was on Twitter in particular. Let's take a look. So we got this one, Kathy Mgwai, who says white media will literally dig into your trash bin and call it investigative journalism. They will do just about anything to bring a black man down and will stop at nothing. They're doing it to Julius Malema and many others. It's crazy. Stay woke. Bongani says nowhere in the Communist Manifesto as revolutionary does it say you can't buy things you afford or you can't have sex or drink alcohol. It just says that people must share the country's wealth. In conclusion, this is trash journalism. Simon Grinrod says, if a journalist decides to target the trash and make assumptions about members of the particular party to reinforce their agenda, that's up to them. It's gutter journalism, but would be fairer if the same low-level tactics were applied to all other parties. It just looks vindictive. Mzwandile Masina says, the EFF South Africa's condom story is deplorable. What kind of nonsensical journalism is this? Country affected by HIV and AIDS, we condemn people using condoms just because they fight for the poor. Daily Maverick, you are trash, hence you go to private bins looking for rubbish. Okay, so that's Mzwandile Masina, of course, who's the mayor of Ekurhuleni. All right, so let's try and unpack all of this, gentlemen. It's always going to be controversial, isn't it? Looking into people's bins, and I don't know. You know, I was busy trying to process my mind about when is it a step too far. Let's start with you, Makhadi. What are your thoughts on going into people's bins? Is that a step too far?
Well, I mean, I don't think in our search for truth, anything is a step too far. I suppose the question for me is what you make out of the information you get out of the trash. So if you go into somebody's bins and, you know, Miriam would not be the first and is not the last to do something like that. We also know that the police and other investigators do look at people's trash. But the thing for me is that you can't then make very serious factual findings based on what you find in the trash. Because, you know, if I stay, for example, in a guest house and I have guests, say the EFF, you know, stayed in this house, they have guests, and the guests come and they bring whatever champagne and whatever wines and drinks that they had in that house. So when you find the trash, how do you then make the leap, you know, to say who specifically did what? I mean, that particular story talks about clothes bought at H&M. EFF said, hey, racist store, this, right? And then still go there. And the idea there is that people must not be hypocritical. You say racism, you cry racism on the one hand, but then you come back and go to the same store to buy when you're looking for nice things. I'm a journalist, I'm interested in the facts. So if you're going to make assumptions and extrapolations based on that, you must say very clearly that these are extrapolations. Because if you're using the H&M, if we zoom into the H&M example,
could have been anybody who
so who in the EFF leadership went to the store? What exactly did they buy? Because if you're going to say they are hypocrites, so you're assuming Julius Malema, the spokesperson of the EFF, and everybody else who stayed in that house are hypocrites. And as a journalist, I'd argue against that. I'd say you can't use the trash as final evidence. You can use the trash as the pointer for your investigation to say there's hypocrisy here. Let's find the detail.
All right.
But if you use it as a
you can't go from the trash to fact. Okay, Tshamano?
Yeah, so my take is that there's really nothing new about this story. And I base my argument on the following points. One, it is correct to say you will do probably just anything to try and investigate, get to the bottom of the story.
Yeah.
I would argue that 7 out of 10 politicians, they say the things they don't do.
Right.
Now, what does that mean? We're talking about the issue of hypocrisy. One of the arguments that have been put into this article is that why is it that members of the EFF will go and get accommodation in Camps Bay where they would spend, as we now understand it, 60,000 rands? Why are they not going to Khayelitsha, if not Guguletu, to find a B&B? And again, the whole issue around communism is being, questioned.
Yeah.
But my take really is that it's really just one of those ordinary stories.
Yeah.
But if you really want to crack the issues, I would rather argue that maybe don't mix it up with some of these things that end up dominating the debate. In this case, we make specific reference to the used condoms, right? Now, if the debate is about is EFF really genuine, are they, do they really care about the interest of the majority or the masses of South African people who live in really bad conditions? Most of them are poor. Yeah. If that is the question, I would rather argue it differently. But the whole issue of the used condom to the extent.
So let me ask you this. I mean, we'll talk about the content of the story just now, but the first layer for me is it too far to go into the bins? Let's forget about what she found and what she wrote. Just the idea that a journalist can go into my bin, is that fair play or is that not?
For me, it is.
Yeah.
There are no safe spaces where journalists are permitted to go to get information, to establish the facts, and to report accurately.
And she didn't break the law.
No, she didn't. The question is the application. It's what she does with the information.
We'll talk about that just now, but just the act.
But going into the trash itself, it's fair play as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, Tshamano?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, you will do whatever it takes to get to the bottom of the story.
Yeah.
Now, what we seeing here, obviously, like I'm saying, and I'm going to go back to the point, what is it that you're looking for? What are the key points in your story?
Yes.
Now, the whole issue, if you look at the entire conversation now, Peter, it is now pinned down on the used condoms. And is that really the debate?
Okay, so let's now start talking about the content. So she was okay to the point of going through the people's trash, right? Some people are saying that's gutter journalism, but you're saying that that's okay. Let's now start talking about the content. So the line about the condoms was just a line. She didn't draw any inference beyond that. She just said, this is what I found. Are you saying that she shouldn't have done an inventory of what she found because people would have picked up on it?
Maybe let me respond to this point because it's exactly the argument I'm raising. The point is that, yes, you go into the space and these are some of the things you find in that bin, right? But what are the key points? What is it that you want to tell us about this story? My understanding is that don't be a hypocrite. Don't say this and on the one side, you don't do the things that you always talk about. Now, when you bring in the all condoms. Of those, the condoms issue, it then overshadows the conversation.
That's the public now. But what are your thoughts about? You said that she inferred and extrapolated, but she did write to Ndlozi, the spokesperson for the party, and he replied twice and she put those replies, she put what she wrote and said, this is what we found, this is why I've written this. What's your comment? He had an opportunity.
Yeah, he had an opportunity to respond to some facts, and to information that's not conclusive, that doesn't really help us to understand anything. The condoms, for example, used and half-used condoms. What am I supposed to make of that information? So, even if I was Ndlozi.
So let's talk about the H&M stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't deny that they bought the clothes. So, do we then say that she made an incorrect inference?
No. That's fair game, right? But it's not complete. So, as a journalist, I would have expected her to say who actually went to H&M, who bought. So, who are you accusing? So, if you are in Ndlozi and you must respond to an inquiry like that, to whom do you go? Do you say, do we create a WhatsApp group of 20 people who stayed in that house, or is it 8 people, and then say, hey guys, right? But I'm saying, if you're going to make the claim, establish the facts about the claim first, and through reading the story, I don't get a sense. I get a sense instead. I don't get a sense that the facts are established. I get a sense that people were in a rush to publish. The information should have been used as a basis of several stories to do, and the H&M is one other story that could have been taken out of the information collated and collected from the trash. The trash is a good source, but the trash should have been used.
Use the information properly, that's essentially.
Yeah.
All right, we could chat about this for quite a while. Unfortunately, we run out of time, but maybe we can revisit it again when we look at the papers. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll chat a little bit about our beloved SABC. What is the situation? Our execs were in Parliament this past week. What did they say? Welcome back. You're watching Media Monitor. Now, the SABC Executive Management, joined by the Communications Minister, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, appeared before the Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications earlier this week to reflect on the corporation's financial status. Minister Ndabeni-Abrahams told the committee that the state wants a financially sustainable SABC. She said that her department hopes to avoid day zero, and that's when the organisation would be unable to pay full salaries. And a government-led technical team is working with the SABC on its turnaround strategy on a weekly basis. The SABC's acting CEO, Craig Van Rooyen, told us more after the Portfolio Committee meeting.
Committee meeting that we had yesterday, one of the matters that we spoke to was around whether or not the SABC has a turnaround strategy. I just want to confirm that there definitely is a turnaround strategy, and this turnaround strategy is a strategy that's approved by the SABC board. It's not a strategy that needs to be approved by Treasury. The only dealings that we have with Treasury is in terms of soliciting a guarantee that is required to go out to the banks with. And in order to solicit that guarantee, Treasury would normally require preconditions, and there were 11 preconditions that they required. So, I just want to categorically state that there's no need for a guarantee to be approved by Treasury. In fact, it's the role of the SABC management to develop the strategy. And to this end, the executive directors and group executives of the SABC have developed a robust strategic roadmap. And this roadmap has clearly defined action plans. And I just want to also state that the strategic roadmap was shared with the DOC for inputs And normally in a process like this, the SABC management has arranged full-day workshop to take the leaders of the company, the group executives, and organized labor through the strategy, where they then solicit inputs from them, and that was duly done. Sakina, in line with our governance processes, the strategic roadmap was presented to the SABC board for consideration and approval. I want to state that the board is the only body that can approve or reject the SABC strategy.
All right, so that was our acting COO saying that there is a plan in place and trying to spell out whose role it is, Treasury, the department, and the banks as well, in terms of helping the South African Broadcasting Corporation to move forward. Let me unpack this with you, gentlemen. And at the back of all of this, we've got to keep remembering that the public broadcaster is owned by the public. The public is the shareholder, and so the question is it too big to fail? You just pour money into this thing regardless? Let's start with you, Tshamano.
I think what is important is to say, let's look at the financial model. How is SABC doing in terms of its finances? You're very right, and I agree with you. When you talk about the public, because SABC is servicing almost everybody, and I'm talking about the poorest of the poor. These are people who don't have the luxury of putting up a DSTV. It reaches all South Africans, all 9 provinces, across over 50 African states. Now, the point, obviously, how do you then assist the SABC? But of course, making sure that it becomes a sustainable thing. But let's just go back, a little. A few years back, SABC had rights in football, for example. If you remember the days of the PSL, what happened to a deal like that? We saw some of those rights given to their competitors on the one hand. So there are a number of contributing factors to where we are today. But I think what is then it becomes important is to say, if you are going to bail out the SABC, how far do you go? Is there a turnaround strategy? Can it be tested? Is it something that you can work with? Because otherwise you don't just want to keep putting money. You put money into something that's not going to give you anything back. But closing down the SABC, I can tell you as a matter of fact, it's not even an option.
All right, your thoughts on how to manage this? Because, people will look around and say, hang on, Eskom is burning gazillions of rand, SAA is burning gazillions of rand, and they're actually getting cash, whereas the SABC is actually just asking for a guarantee to go to the banks with. Is it too much to ask?
I suppose maybe let's start with the minister. The minister says she's not happy with the plan that has been put in place in order for her to give the go-ahead for the board to get the guarantee But for me, the problem is that the SABC has been in this situation for quite a while. Why does it take so long for the board and the minister to have a meeting of minds about what needs to be done? So it's not enough, I'm saying, for the minister to sit on the sidelines and say, your turnaround plan is not working. She must say, this is why it is not working. This is what is not in the plan. This is what I need you to do for me to be. She's the one who needs to be satisfied. The board and the SABC execs have put together what they think would work, right? Would it work? Would it not work? I mean, that means we must go into the detail. But she is unhappy with what they put together. Now, she and them must have a meeting of minds about what exactly needs to be done, and for the process to move forward. And for me, in fact, I mean, as a leader, I prefer an organization like the SABC where things are not working, because then you get an opportunity to reimagine how to take it apart and then pull it together and say, do we have more people than we need? Is that the problem? Because there were statements attributed to the previous board that we need to retrench people. Is that the sticking point? That the minister is sitting there and she's thinking, no, as the ANC government, we can't be seen to be retrenching people. No, come up with something. And they're saying, what is in the something? So I'm saying that conversation needs to be honest. The board needs to be frank, if not just with the minister, but with all of us, and say, all these people with MBAs and all manner of things who are executives of the SABC can't put together a turnaround plan that meets the minister's requirements. What's the problem? Is the plan the problem, or is the minister the problem? So if they don't understand each other, this institution belongs, as you correctly indicate, to the South African people. That conversation must then move from the SABC boardrooms to become a public conversation, because the people who are in Malamulele, in Limpopo, and the people who are in Mthatha, they don't care about the politics of the SABC. All they care about is that there's a reporter that we know who's here, and the major newspapers and the commercial radio stations don't have a reporter here nearby, but the SABC is able to do that. Now, if the politics affect their access, not just to the content, but to the communication with the SABC, then you have a problem. Because we say in the end that the democracy that we have is what it is because people have access to information and knowledge. And the SABC, as a public broadcaster, is supposed to play a very important role in that regard. And if the SABC is mired in all this drama and controversy, and the board and the minister, don't come to an agreement soon, the people who suffer are not the people in suits here, the SABC. It is the people on the ground. Right. And that thing is
let me ask you this. And I'm looking around the world and I see other public broadcasters, and this is a public service. Should it not be run like a non-profit organization, and perhaps rather get a budget vote from government, much like other departments do, and do the work of providing a service to the public, and then let advertising go to the private sector? Could that be a way to approach this? Because when we focus on sustainability, other equations start coming into the programming that you put on air, what motivates those programming, etc., etc. Could we be like the BBC, for example, that has no advertising?
That's an excellent example you're citing there, Peter. Perhaps maybe it's time to look at some of those models, like you pointing out, the BBC. How are they doing it? Is it time perhaps maybe to look at a different model? Because it can't be an NGO and you just want to keep saying, no, they're there to fulfill their constitutional mandate. It has to be more than just fulfilling the constitutional mandate. The people that are here that need salaries, all the operations, as we know, buildings that needs to be maintained and all of that. Where does that come from? You need money. There has to be a way. So maybe let me just go back to a point which Makura makes. And I think it is important. From a leadership standpoint, the minister has to say, yes, I see your turnaround strategy. These are the points which I think will work. This and this and that, I think it's not going to work. These are my suggestions. There are a lot of experts out there which I think it may not even cost anything. Perhaps maybe just to reach out and say, we need assistance. What are some of the ideas that you can share? You know, and I think that's really what is. But just to come and say, no, the turnaround strategy is not working. We're not going to give you the money, or we have to still, you know, have this. Have the conversation going. Until when? Because it's an urgent matter we're talking about. Right. So those are some of the things, Peter, which I feel very strongly about, and I think from a leadership standpoint, the minister has to do something about it. You can't just say, I don't like this. What is it that you don't like about it? What are you doing yourself?
Makhadi, the Department of Social Development does not need to make money. It gets given money to help the public. Should that be the case with the SABC?
No.
I mean, the thing for me is accountability. So the resources we have as a country are finite. So the SABC will get whatever allocation. Yeah. So the thing about the system is that even if you went to Parliament to get funds, you must still go back to Parliament to account for how the funds are used. So if the framework within which you operate is clear and everybody knows what their roles are and so on, then everything becomes easy. So you get the funds, you have a clearly defined mandate, you go and operate within that mandate. So you then must then find a way of getting yourself out of that mandate, not the mandate, out of your financial situation without getting yourself out of the mandate.
Okay.
You know, but if the minister is sitting there, perhaps, or if the board is sitting there and is thinking, sorry, we have way too many people than we need, and the minister is saying no. You know, that's a political management.
Okay, so tough conversations that need to be had, essentially.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll start taking a look at the newspapers as well as what's been happening in the digital space. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor now. We'll be taking a look at the newspapers in a short while. But first, a multifaceted digital storytelling lab in Makhanda in the Eastern Cape is changing the way we tell stories. The lab brings innovation, creativity and improved digital literacy to the Makhanda community. It gives storytellers an opportunity to explore and share their ideas and stories on a worldwide basis. Let's take a look at this.
This week we feature an app that has been created by electronic payment company Ucash to pay car guards and street vendors. But first, Tanya Kari walks us through the Twitter streets.
This week, for the first time in a long time, we saw a sports team take the lion's share of the top 10. Bafana account for 57% of our conversation over the week. They certainly have topped the charts, even though their performance has been less than exciting. The nation is obsessed with their entry in AFCON. They also received a bonus for qualifying as the final 16 at AFCON, and this incensed social media users, largely due to their bad performance in the past, as we all hold our breath for Egypt. EFF and Malema have made the second largest impact outside of Bafana, largely due to what has been dubbed the DA divorce and the battle for Tshwane, and this may lead to early elections. Malema also failed in a court bid to the so-called Apartheid-era Riotous Act. State capture inquiry was beyond riveting this week as we learnt of the ins and outs of Waterkloof and the Gupta wedding, something we've been wanting to know for a very long time. PIC inquiry probed a 21 million rand loan to a bus company, again exposing a series of looting at yet another parastatal. And then finally, a viral video of a texting Gautrain bus driver certainly made an impact in social media this week, as the bus driver was filmed casually texting and driving the community around town.
The SABC News website and app have been keeping our audiences in the loop of the big events. Let's look at what our users read the most on our website. SAA introduced a new aircraft to service New York route. 87 Cuban-trained South African doctors graduated at Walter Sisulu University. Baroka FC unveiled 6 new players. And Kaizer Chiefs target player Emmanuel Okwi says his future hasn't been decided. In today's world, we are transacting using physical cash less. However, this innovative cashless system will allow motorists to pay car guards without the inconvenience of carrying cash. uCash is a digital wallet that allows anyone without a bank account to send and receive cash. The company was started when a man wanted to pay his gardener but did not have any cash on him.
So you get the standard uCash card, which is a QR code payment. So customers are able to download either their banking app or Zappa or uCash. Then you get the receiver, so the person who owns the card. I, as the customer, have bought goods and services from this merchant. I'll come with my banking app phone, I'll take it out, and then I'll scan the QR code and be able to get paid. So the merchant will get paid. Once they've scanned and been paid, then they'll get an SMS, which is a notification that they'll take to Pick and Pay, be able to show the cashier, and then they'll be able to withdraw the money.
The creators saw the need to create an inclusion platform for the mass market that could deliver affordable financial services.
Well, the interesting thing is that a lot of people in the market are aware of solutions like e-wallet. Unfortunately, that's limited to people that are with specific banks. But we all got the challenge that we never have cash in our wallets, whether we're at a petrol station, whether we're paying a car guard, whether we have somebody, a domestic worker, a handyman. We always got the situation that we want to pay them, but then we look in our wallets and we've only got plastic. So we said, well, how do we create a solution that allows these people to accept digital payments without all the big hurdles in the market where they can't go to a bank and get a card machine, they can't go to a bank and get a bank account, but they still want to be enabled to receive digital payments.
Car guards and vendors have welcomed the app.
Now it's better because if you're the customer, no money is going to put my card.
Since I started using uCash, my things have become more easier for my consumers because nowadays nobody carries the cash. Everybody is using cards or snap scan.
That's all we have for you this week. For SABC News in Johannesburg, I'm Lebo Changela.
All right, and our thanks to our SABC Digital News team for producing that package for us. All right, let's take a look at the newspapers now. But before we do that, Makhadi, I want to start with you. You're the newly appointed editor at Sunday World. You've been there for 5 minutes, so you've just been shown your parking bay. But not so long ago, we thought that Sunday World was going to disappear. What's happened?
Yeah, Tiso Blackstar announced that the Sunday World is going to be closed. What then happened was that Mr. David Mabilu, the director of Funduzi Media, expressed an interest and said, can we have a conversation about why you're closing down the paper, and can we look at whether it is possible to put together a rescue package and get the team behind the brand and see what we can do. And the discussion started at that point. And the bean counters exchanged notes and consultations with the editorial people, then got underway. And he took a decision that he'll actually buy the paper, and he did.
All right.
And as he announced, or as the two companies announced that the paper has been bought, the seller was also bought.
Okay, so then Libasha came in and took over. I'm not going to ask you about Libasha, whether they're buying and flogging a dead horse, but what are you going to do to make sure that the Sunday World flourishes? What can you do? Is it possible?
Yeah, it's very possible. So when I say that there were ITS, there were consultations and people looked at, when we say that the paper is losing 1 million every month, what do we actually mean? So, that discussion then became detailed. And we then looked and said, Is it a savings problem, or is it a revenue generation problem, or is it an editorial problem? So a few things were identified, and from an editorial point of view, there's changes that we're going to introduce, but I must indicate that the Sunday World is a tabloid, and is a very good tabloid. You know, we don't necessarily do the trash. Yeah. You know, but we're going to introduce exciting things. Like, for example, when you buy this paper, you don't expect at this moment to get, you know, some informed business news. Yes. You know, there's no real coverage of politics. So we're going to introduce those elements in here without upsetting its makeup as a tabloid publication. So we're going to do that. So we're busy talking to a few reporters and a few seasoned journalists.
Feel different, but will be recognizable as the Sunday World.
Yes. Okay. And of course, commercially, there's also quite a number of exciting things that we're talking about that we're going to introduce to the publication. You know, I'm saying right now that this is going to be one of the best papers this country has ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's too early right now, but going into the future, having spoken to the director of Funduzi, Mr. Mabilu, and having workshopped what needs to happen to the paper going forward, I can say right now, and I have a history in newspapers, been around the block a little bit, but I can tell you right now that when we have this conversation in a year, and if you don't mention the Sunday World when you do your newspaper reviews, this is what we have in the Sunday Times, the Sunday World. People are going to start looking at this and say, you see, the SABC is becoming a Mabena situation.
Libashi have taken over TISO. TISO too happy to get rid of this. Are they flogging a dead horse, or is there something they can do like Makhadi is hoping to do?
Peter, there are a number of challenges at the present moment. One of those has to do with the public's confidence into the media. Right. There are a whole lot of things that we can go into, but the summary, answering your question, I would say there are other challenges in terms of how do you keep this thing alive. One of the conversations that you and I had, I can't remember if it was a month ago or so, it was around a revenue. How do you make sure that you keep this thing alive? But we are going to see really, because there are a number of initiatives. Part of the initiative in the last week, as you already know, has come from SANEF, which talks about an inquiry into journalism ethics and all of that. So that is also part of it. I guess it will really be a matter of wait and see. But I think I just need to make this point: whoever takes over, whether it's Libasha or whoever. And I think the owners all themselves, beyond business, they have to be people who have the interest of the country at heart. They have to be thinking of a democratic state. How do we take the country forward? Because media plays a very important role, especially those papers that were under TISO Black Star. You're talking about Sunday, Sunday Times, Sowetan, Business Day, Financial. So they are important role players. So the owners have to have some kind of interest.
I have to rush us, unfortunately, because of time. So you've got the Sunday World in front of you.
Yes.
And what I'm going to do is give me the paper, and I'm going to put it in front of my screen here. And then you're going to tell me why you went with this as a lead story. And what's
WHP's legal drama. In the celebrity space, and given the bouquet of news we had, that was one of our strongest. It talks to what happens to celebrities, you know, in their later years,
Yes.
in the space, and even after they are gone from this world, because WHP had a son, has a
Yes.
son,
Yeah.
and now the family is fighting over who must have custody of
And
the
it's
child.
estate planning, isn't it? And
Yeah,
a lot of our
yeah,
artists,
yeah.
footballers,
Exactly,
don't do the
exactly
estate
my
planning.
point. So, who is going to take care of the child?
Yeah.
And the grandmother is saying, this child has been staying with me, and somebody else says, no, but you have other interests. We're not going to go into those now, but you know, but it's those kind of things.
Yeah.
He had a house, and now the house is being so there's like. We had
Everybody's
this celebrated
descending,
star as a country. Now, the family and the people around him are involved in this major war about not only his child, but, you know, the resources he left behind.
Unfortunately, but what you're describing sounds like a typical family, actually. Tshamano.
SNDF.
Is this the Sunday
yeah,
Times?
This is a story on the Sunday
Love Me
Times.
Tender. Sunday
Yeah,
Times.
Love Me Tender. That's right. Yeah. So it's a story of a major general, Ndlovu, who is accused of, awarding his spouse tender to the tune of
Incredible.
210 million rands. So
how is that even possible that you can just give your wife a tender?
Yeah.
Anyway, and the drama about this is that they posted their life on social media.
The cars
fancy
and
cars, business class travel.
8.5.
It's just a radar,
million
isn't it? Saying, look at us.
worth of a house. Yeah.
Gosh, gents, we've run out of time, as we always do. But Makhadi, good luck with your
Thank
new
you.
tenure. And let's
Thank you.
hope that the Sunday world is revived and flies under your creatorship.
It will.
Tshamano, always a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
And
Thank
you at home, thank you so much indeed for watching Media Monitor. We hope that you'll join us again at the same time next week. Have a great week in between though. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.